A civilization that does not fight for its roots is bound to get doomed. The continuous struggle of Hindu-Indian civilization is the reason that it still remains the largest and the oldest living civilization. As Ram Janmabhoomi temple stands as the testament of civilizational resurrection, Hindus are now trying to reclaim all their temples that fell victim of foreign Islamic invasion. In line with that, the battle has started over the Harihar temple in Sambhal, where Babur illegally built a structure which the Muslim sites call Shahi Jama Masjid. Following the violent reaction from Islamists and their backers, the usual suspects have kicked off a shrill narrative. They claim that the way Hindus are finding temples beneath the mosques, a similar pattern would create trouble for Hindus if the Buddhist sites were to be found. Hello and welcome to TFI Post. I'm your host Paurush Gupta. If you like our videos, do subscribe to our channel TFI Post and don't forget to press the bell icon. Let's begin. For instance, Ajit Anjum, a well-known biased journalist, posted on X, and I quote, "If many such temples are excavated, remains of symbols of Buddhism will also be found. The appearance of the idols of Lord Buddha has also been changed at many places. What will happen if there is a demand to search for symbols of Buddhism in the courtyards of temple?" Unquote. He further asked, and I quote, "Will the country be run by law and constitution or by the extremist agendas of Hindutva people?" Unquote. If his statement rings the bell, it is actually the statement of former Samajwadi Party leader Swami Prasad Maurya. He once reiterated the similar concerns. But since Anjum calls himself a journalist, his argument should have been at par with a hate-mongering divisive politician. Nonetheless, the argument is half-baked and far away from reality. To start with, it is a well-established fact that Hinduism is the predecessor of Buddhism. So if we talk about the conversion of Buddhist temples into Hindu temples, it is an undeniable fact that Hindu sites were also converted to Buddhist monasteries or places of worship. To start with, the world's largest temple, Angkor Wat, was actually a Hindu temple, but it was converted by King Jayavarmana VII during his reign 1181 to 1222. The prime reason for this was Angkor being sacked by the Cham people of modern-day Vietnam. Jayavarmana believed that Hindu gods had failed him. Later, the temple saw gradual conversion. But we rarely see a clarion call from Hindus to get the temple back to its original form. The viable reason for this is the civilizational confluence between both the religions. Nevertheless, let's talk about the conversion of Hindu temples during the time when Buddhism was gaining ground. At the outset, the features of Buddhism was aestheticism, which is one small part of larger Hindu philosophy. Now, since ancient asceticism preached about renunciation, which obviously meant detachment from the materialistic world, how could the word of Buddhism be spread? So in Buddhism, the monks and nuns who followed asceticism were allowed to go to visit families' houses on invitation. This made the establishment of monasteries and samghas in populous areas a key feature of Buddhism. Now, since the common people in forest tribal areas had their own Hindu deity called Yakshas, their sacred places were converted to Buddhist sites. This is precisely described in several Joffrey's The Origins of Yoga and Tantra, Indic religions to the 13th century. It is referred to by Karam Tej Singh Sarao in his book The History of Mahabodhi Temple at Bodh Gaya. K.T.S. Sarao states that either these Yakshas places with sacred trees were either converted or were worshipped in sharing, and Mahabodhi tree is a perfect example of that. As a matter of fact, the site remained in control of Buddhists and Brahmins for most of time until the Turks, Muslim invaders, destroyed the temple towards the end of 12th century. Moreover, after decimation of the site, it was Hindu Shaivite sannyasis who took charge of the temple 4 centuries later, and then the foreign visitors started trickling down at the place. So it is the fact that Ashoka built the temple there, but its existence is not merely credited to that. Notably, Mahabodhi temple is the most sacred site for Buddhists, but from before that, Gaya has been a holy place in Hinduism for Pinddan. Both the religions have flourished there simultaneously. Now, the leftist intellectuals might argue that Hindus deliberately associate themselves with Buddhism by claiming that Bhagwan Buddha was the incarnation of Bhagwan Vishnu. This is actually a typical Ambedkarite view of Buddhism, which is by essence antithetical to Hinduism. First of all, it is documented history that the temple was worshipped by both religions and was invaded by Turks. Moreover, leave the Ambedkarite Buddhism aside for a moment, the oldest Buddhist faction, Theravada Buddhism, which is also considered to following the original teachings of Buddha, believe their roots to have emanated from Hinduism. This is the same sentiment that most often Hindus echo when talking about the Buddha and his teachings. In fact, they believe Bhagwan Ram as a Bodhisattva and Bhagwan Buddha was born as Ram in one of his earlier lives. The Theravadins have their own Ramayana known as Dasratha Jataka. So basically, before peddling a half-baked theory, the leftist intellectuals should understand that the Ambedkarite view of Buddhism and its alienation with Hinduism is actually a misguided concept, which was politically charged and is far from reality. So if there are Buddhist sites converted into Hindu ones, there are also Hindu sites which got converted to Buddhist places of worship, and to put it correctly, the number of which cannot even be counted. But still, we do not see Buddhists claiming Hindu temples or the other way around, essentially because they are part of one umbrella. Their teachings have emanated from one origin. Moreover, the Buddhists who follow the religion from inception or are not associated with Ambedkarite Buddhism have no animosity with Hinduism. In fact, it is Hinduism which they feel a sense of oneness with. If one wants to have an experience, they must recall how the Dalai Lama was welcomed in Vrindavan and his feet were washed by the Vaishnavas by their hand at Ramanreti. On the contrary, one must also talk to Ambedkarite Buddhists who see Buddhism as merely a tool for political vengeance. Having said that, leftist intellectuals must see the reality that when resurrection of Hindu temples is talked about in the scope of Islamic invasion of holy places, it is not only a religious issue. It is in fact less of a religious issue and more of a civilizational matter. While in Buddhist and Hindu temples, whatever is the history, it is intra-civilizational. And a Buddhist site is as sacred for Hindus as some temples as Bhagwan Buddha is an incarnation of Vishnu. To conclude, neither the genuine followers of Buddhism nor the genuine followers of Hindu Dharma will ever feel an urge to reclaim the opposite sides.